Hey everybody, I'm Judith McGill with DataBank, and I am here with Calli Schlientz, who leads our compliance team. Hi, Calli.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being with us today. I know it's a busy time for you and your team, so I really appreciate you taking the time. Today, we want to talk about privacy regulation and impacts on the data center environment. So, for those of you who are listening, what we really want to cover in the few minutes we have here is what is that interconnection between privacy regulations and the impact on data center operators, and why you, as an enterprise IT person, would care. All right, that's basically what we're going to chat about. So, Calli, tell me a little about the privacy regulation landscape. What are some of the major regulations that are affecting data center operators?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few, and depending on the space that you're in, it will depend on which ones apply to you. So we have things that are international, like GDPR and the data privacy framework, which connects the US to the EU. There are others like HIPAA and PCI, which are going to have further restrictions for the United States, and the specifics around medical data or personally identifiable data and payment industry information, things like your credit card information that you definitely don't want to be compromised in any way. Those are the big ones right now that we're seeing, but also seeing a lot of up and coming state privacy regulations. We
Mm,
have some that are already in place for consumers and general individuals who live in the states, but then there's additional ones that are up and coming for various pieces of state regulation.
okay. So, for the uninitiated observer on all of this,
Mhm.
why does that even matter to a data center provider? Aren't all of these regulations really more incumbent upon the enterprise rather than on the infrastructure provider?
Well, that depends. So it depends on what type of services you're seeking out from the data center provider. So the data center provider is going to be responsible for all of the physical and environmental controls that surround that data environment. So where you're putting your data matters. So while you might be responsible for the data itself as our customer or as you're trusting your data to someone who is then storing their data within a data center. Um, though that you want to make sure that those pieces of data are retained within a secured environment and that they're constantly being monitored and maintained. And that includes things like making sure that the infrastructure is up to date, that they're checking on redundancy, that they're able to maintain power, that they're able to maintain infrastructure in the event of an outage. You don't want there to be any sort of impact to the security or the um, integrity of your data because the
Right.
data center has some sort of event. And so by making sure that the data center is complying with their portion of the controls, you're also making sure that you're able to comply with your portion of the controls.
Okay. And then by the very nature of the word comply, not
Mhm.
only do you have to do this, but you have to prove that you're doing this.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So we have to prove throughout the year, multiple times throughout the year, to various different auditing firms and assessment firms that we're meeting the requirements on the data center, that we're providing all of the right evidence, that we're maintaining all of the right maintenance, that we're continuing to evaluate capacity and planning for space and power and growth that allows for our customers to trust in us that we have the ability to continue to maintain that environment long term, not short term.
Yeah.
We obviously want to maintain it short term, but the long term is where that matters. You don't want to have to move your data in 6 months because we outgrew our capacity.
Right.
And so we have to be able to prove that we're evaluating each and every one of those aspects in our audits. And then we provide those reports in a transparent fashion to our customers to say, here's our audit reports. Here's what our ratings were on each of these controls that we're responsible for. Now you get to inherit from those things and you can then provide those to your auditors and they can evaluate whether or not they believe you're in a secure environment.
Okay. Sounds pretty straightforward. I'm sure it's a lot easier said than done, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so here's the meaty part of our conversation. Talk to me about the challenges and the complexities and the business impacts.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I talked about space and power, right? Those are big challenges, especially in today's environment. We're seeing a lot more power consumption. And so making sure that we're planning for that as we have these customers that are bringing in more data, that they're bringing in more infrastructure of their own to our environment, that we're able to meet the requirements that they have to continue to scale in their own environments. A lot
Okay.
of businesses are moving to um, data center environments, cloud environments, the federal government, state governments, small businesses, across every facet, you're seeing this move um, to the cloud, to being in a secured storage environment. So, in order to provide for that, we're having to provide all of the infrastructure that supports that. Supply chain is another challenge for that.
Mm.
Trying to get the infrastructure in order to make sure that we're maintaining all of those critical components, generators and chillers, and um, each of the parts of our responsibility so that then our customers can trust that those are up to date, they're maintained, that we're providing new infrastructure when it's needed, and that they're not having to worry that there is something that is failing on our end.
Got it. Okay, so you talked about space, you talked about power issues, constraints. What about impacts um, to a business model or to financial performance?
Yeah. So having a secured environment where you're able to ensure that your data is protected, that your data is maintained, that you're able to rely on the location that your data is at, is really vital in making sure that that you are not affected by things like data breach, things
Right.
like um, having a physical breach of the environment, right? That's part of our responsibility. We're making sure that we're securing the physical environment to ensure that people are not entering the space, making sure that you're able to secure your um, logical environment so that there's no impact of data breach, and those data breaches are expensive. There's a lot of not just financial impact to the business, but reputational impact as well.
Mhm.
And so making sure that we're able to help provide to that, having the ability for customers of our own to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm going through this audit or this assessment, and I need support." We can either provide direct support or we can provide contacts for direct support when it's not something that's familiar to them. That sometimes is a big financial impact. I've never been through this, and I would like some assistance in going through it. Having a good partner in the data center space means having a good partner in all of those other spaces as well.
So that's an important point. I think maybe the expectation is that, okay, you're working with a larger organization, you're on the IT team, you get all of this, you understand exactly what you need, you understand where you need it, you understand where to get the information. That might not be reality, right?
It's true. Um, we think we know where to get things. I
Well,
mean,
on
I'm
the
that way, right?
enterprise side, I mean, so you're talking about support, one of the things Mark Haupt, our CISO, talks about is, when you have an issue, you call DataBank, you pick up the phone,
Absolutely.
and you talk to somebody.
That's
So,
exactly right. The 24/7 support that DataBank provides allows our customers to rely on that. I can call and say, I have a question. I need help with this. I
yeah,
am having this concern. I'm seeing this in my environment. Can you help look into this?" Whatever this happens to be, we have customers that even in our colo environments, we're going through a PCI audit and we're really not sure what your responsibility and our responsibility are. We can provide those responsibility matrix that allow for a separation. Here's exactly what you need to be responsible for. And if you have questions or if you're unsure of where to get that information, we can help find it. We have a portal that a lot of your direct uptime information is going to be located on. You can get statistics on what is happening in your environment in real time from that. And
Okay,
that's
so
something that a lot of other places don't have available.
before you get to a point where there's an audit,
Hmm.
that's a good time to pick up the phone and say, what am I staring down the barrel of?
Absolutely.
What can I expect to see?
Absolutely. And we can help with that. That's where in if you know you're responsible for a certain type of compliance, then we can help provide documentation for this is what DataBank does, this is what you're responsible for, and here's how we can help support your efforts,
Yeah,
regardless of what that type of assessment is. If it's HIPAA, if it's PCI, if it's FedRAMP, we can help provide that information for where that line is and
yeah.
where we can assist across the line as well.
Have you ever encountered a situation where you're talking to a customer and you say, well, of course you're responsible for this, and the customer says, oh, really? I didn't know that. Have you ever encountered
Yes,
that?
we have actually. That's not something that happens a lot, but we do see where
Good.
customers came into the environment and said, "Oh, great, you guys can do all of these things." Yes, we can. And there are services that we can provide to help with those things, but we don't necessarily natively do them, or maybe it's something that we can assist you in doing in your own environment. But depending on the type of customer that you are, depending on the type of compliance that you have, we may or may not be able to actually conduct that for you. And
Understood.
so
Yeah,
it does happen. We see that happen more often than not around, for example, vulnerability scanning. We are vulnerability scanning their environment, but we cannot remediate their environment without their direct approval and authorization because that could cause an outage. It could cause a
sure.
downtime for maintenance. And we want to make sure that the customer has full availability and full knowledge of when those things need to occur.
Yeah, okay. Well, so as we mentioned at the beginning, simple but not easy, right?
Hmm.
So, uh, guidance then for the IT pros out there. You're selecting a data center provider. What do they need to be looking for?
Very first thing is always ask to speak to the compliance team. That is always going to be my number one recommendation. And not because I'm a part of the compliance team, but because there are so many times when you're looking at a book of services and what a provider can offer to you that it's overwhelming. What does that mean for me? And you're going to get answers, and your salespeople are fantastic at providing those. But the really in depth, I need to know how I do this, or I need to know where I'm responsible for securing this portion or providing my own firewall rules. Those are the questions that your security and your compliance teams are really going to be involved in answering. And so ask to have them engaged. Almost always they're available. It's just a matter of asking the question and ensuring that they get on the phone and they have those deeper conversations. It's great. We provide a ton of free resources. We provide a ton of compliance books of here's what we can do and how we can help you, but it almost always triggers a wait, I have more questions.
Right,
And so
right.
we want to
Okay.
be able to do that. And so I think as an incoming customer to any data center environment, you want to ask the hard questions. This is what I know I have to do. How can you help partner with me to do that?
Okay. So that kind of brings all of the other areas of guidance that you might provide. Let me ask it this way. What would be kind of a red flag, a trigger where you're thinking of working with a data center provider and something does or doesn't happen? What is it that's the red flag and makes you go, I think I should keep looking?
Compliance reports. For one, for me, I always want to look through those reports. I want to see where are the exceptions in those reports. Are there exceptions in the reports? In a SOC report, in an ISO report, do they have nonconformities? Are we looking at something that was an easy change that management responded to right there within the report and addressed? Or are we talking about something that's really critical? Something like access control was not provisioned correctly. That's got a big impact on your environment.
Mhm.
Visit the data center, do a walkthrough. How do you walk through the data center as a visitor? What areas are you able to be escorted to as a visitor? Because that's going to be a telltale sign of where other people are going to be able to access as a visitor as well.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay. Um, let's talk about the future. What kind of trends can we expect? Good news, additional challenges, that sort of thing.
The future is complicated. We have seen over the last few years a number of new privacy frameworks come out. Each state has started to do their own review of privacy frameworks. We saw that with CCPA in California, and then following that, the CPRA. Same thing in California, right? We've seen other states follow suit. We have an up and coming privacy framework in Maryland. There's a number of other states that are beginning to release their own very specific guidelines around privacy, around I want to have the right to be forgotten. I want to have the right to reach out to you as an organization and say, I don't want you to have any of my information anymore. Does the organization have an ability to do that? Can they remove your information? Do they have a way for you to contact them to ask for that removal, right? And a lot of people in today's environment want to have that flexibility. They want to have the ability to control their own privacy. There's currently a draft bill that has come out and is in heated discussion, we'll say. And I'm not going to go into details on it because drafts with the federal government are always just that. They may stay the way they are, but likely probably not. But it's called the American Rights Act of 2024, and it's very, very new. It's currently a 53-page draft, and there's a lot of controversy around it. Does it supersede what the states are doing? Does it help embrace what the states are doing and come alongside them? Is there something that will be an overarching like GDPR that we're going to see come out of this? It's a really around, consumer rights and data minimization, transparency in that privacy environment. And I think we're going to continue to see that over and over again over the next few years as we move more into a privacy regulated environment.
Okay, maybe you come back and chat with me a little bit about the American Privacy Rights Act when it gets a little bit
Absolutely.
closer
I
to
think we'll
reality.
see more with that and with privacy around AI and some of the regulations that are up and coming around that as well. It's going to be interesting.
Indeed. I think there's an old cultural saying, old Asian cultural saying, may you live in interesting times, and it's intended to be a curse.
Yeah, it might be,
Well, but you're still
but
smiling,
it
so that's
is.
good.
It is a very interesting time, and it's just going to get more interesting.
Indeed. All right. I want to tell those who are listening, Calli was talking about the resources we have available. You should know that we recently released an entire compliance guidebook that is available free on databank.com. Calli and her team were the subject matter experts behind it, so you know it's right. And Calli, again, thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you very much.